Jacob Miller had never felt as broken as he did that night, sitting alone at a quiet bus stop under a flickering streetlight, his job gone, his name ruined, and his pockets holding only 18 crumpled dollars, the last thing standing between his 7-year-old daughter Grace and an empty stomach. Because just 1 hour earlier he had been fired from the warehouse after being falsely accused of stealing equipment he had never touched, betrayed by co-workers he once trusted, and sent away. Without a chance to defend himself, and now as the cold night wrapped around him, his thoughts weren't about anger or pride, but about how he would explain to Grace why there would be no dinner, why tomorrow would look even harder than today, when suddenly a woman sat beside him on the bench, her clothes worn, her face pale, her hands shaking as she counted coins and small bills again and again, each time coming up short, her breathing fast and uneven like someone fighting not to break down. And when she finally spoke, her voice cracked as she apologized for bothering him and quietly asked if he had any change for the bus, and Jacob looked at her properly then, really looked, and saw the same desperation he had seen in the mirror too many nights since his wife died, the same silent fear of not knowing how to survive the next hour, and without thinking further, he opened his wallet, saw the $18, hesitated only for a heartbeat, and handed it to her, even as his mind screamed that this was insane, that this money was meant for Grace, that giving it away meant walking miles home and facing an even worse morning, but his heart refused to let him sit there and watch another human being suffer, and the woman stared at the money as if it were a miracle, insisting she couldn't take it, but Jacob gently pushed it into her hands, telling her it was okay, and as tears rolled down her face she promised she would pay him back, a promise Jacob nodded to without believing. Because life had taught him that promises made in desperation rarely came true, and as the bus arrived and carried her away into the night, Jacob began the long walk home, his stomach empty, his heart heavy, whispering apologies to Grace in his mind, unaware that this single moment of kindness was about to rewrite his entire life, because the next morning, after a sleepless night spent staring at unpaid bills while Grace ate the last of the cereal and hummed softly at the table, a sharp knock echoed through the apartment, and when Jacob opened the door, his breath caught as 5 black SUVs lined the street and well-dressed men and women stood waiting, and walking toward him with calm confidence was the same woman from the bus stop, only now transformed, powerful, composed, dressed like someone who owned more than just money, and she introduced herself as Charlotte Lancaster, a successful business owner who explained that the night before she had been robbed of everything by someone close to her, left stranded and vulnerable for the first time in her life, and when the world had turned its back on her, Jacob had been the only one who saw her as a human being, the only one who gave her everything he had, and because of that she had investigated him, learned about his firing, his daughter, his integrity, and offered him a job helping her uncover the betrayal within her company, a chance Jacob accepted not for wealth but for survival, and as days turned into weeks, Jacob uncovered a trail of fraud leading to Charlotte's assistant, who had staged the robbery to hide months of theft, and when the truth came out and the man was arrested, something else had quietly grown in the space between Jacob and Charlotte, something unplanned and dangerous, as Charlotte began attending Grace's soccer games, helping with homework, sharing dinners in Jacob's tiny apartment. And Grace began drawing pictures of 3 people holding hands again, while Jacob fought feelings he believed he had no right to feel, terrified of losing the job and the fragile happiness they had built, until one Saturday after a soccer game, overwhelmed by fear and honesty, Jacob confessed his love, ready to lose everything, only to discover Charlotte had been waiting for him to speak, because she had fallen for him the moment he chose kindness over survival at that bus stop. And as they kissed on the bleachers while Grace watched wide-eyed and hopeful, a new family quietly formed, one built not on money or power but on trust, sacrifice, and compassion. And weeks later, in a park with no ring and no grand plan, Jacob proposed not just for himself but for Grace too, asking Charlotte to marry them both. And as she said yes through tears, Jacob finally understood that sometimes the worst nights lead to the most beautiful lives. That sometimes giving away your last dollar doesn't make you poor, but opens the door to a future richer than you ever imagined. And if this story touched your heart, remember to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel, because here we share stories that prove one small act of kindness can change everything.